Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Grumman Pilot's YouTube channel. And today we're going to talk about the annual inspection. What is it? How do you do it? What does it mean? We're going to treat it as a process, so stay tuned. So we would like to ask you please subscribe, hit the like button, and hit the notify to stay current with our content. So in the simplest of terms, when an aircraft comes in for an annual, it has an inspection. Based upon that inspection, there will be a discrepancy list or a squawk list or a punch list of items that the aircraft needs. And then based upon that list, we will continue. And let me add here that this discrepancy list and the photos of discrepancies are not from the same aircraft so that the innocent are protected. So back to the process. So now that we have this list, we have two options. We can fix that list and we get an airworthy aircraft out of the deal. Or we cannot fix the list and our logs are so annotated that aircraft was inspected with an annual inspection with the following discrepancies. And then they're listed in a punch list so that an A&P, not the shop that it was inspected in, but somebody can come along and sign them off one by one. And when they're done, you have an airworthy aircraft. Now, as you're going through an inspection and you're creating the discrepancy list as you find things, we normally take pictures and we also write them down on a list. And you've already seen our list so that you have a physical record, and the pictures also get to back you up so you have something to show the customer, and in some cases can go into the maintenance log of the aircraft. Now we're going to show you a bunch of pictures we take as an example from an airplane, which are our squawk list. And a lot of the pictures show more than one thing. Like when you see a nav light, it's on. Yay, the nav light works. But it's also showing you what's the condition of the lens that protects it. Is it clear? Is it cloudy? So stand by as we look at all these pictures, and we're going to talk about what each one signifies. Now, as we jump into the pictures, let me just say that these pictures are typical of what we see on most aircraft as we document them. So let's jump into them now. So here we see the ELT cover, and we're documenting what kind of ELT. Now we're looking at the turnaround pulley, its general condition, how clean the floor and all is down there. And as you can see, we did find one little thing to squawk there. We also look here where the wiring is all in that back bulkhead. And you can see all the zip codes, and it's kind of unorganized. It's not unairworthy, but that's the condition as we found it. And here it is on the other side of the ELT. We're not real happy where that bundle goes across that sharp crevice in that bulkhead lightning hole, but you know, it is airworthy and we would like to change it, but again, it's just a squawk. Now we're looking at the tail, how well lubricated it is. As we see, we're going to need some adjustment there. We're also looking at the canopy rails, and on this particular aircraft, they were pretty dirty. They had been attempted to be clean, but the canopy had never been fully taken off. And so we took the canopy completely off so that we get to the back section where the dirt and debris likes to hide. And while we had the rails off, they were cleaned, as well as we addressed all the buttons and we checked all the rivets and the bondment to the fuselage. So the canopy inspection is a lot more than just a single check on the item. And as you can see here, here's some of the dirt and debris in the track that we ended up having to clean. We're also looking at the rub marks on the canopy. Now, when you get to the rails, as you can see here, we have the canopy and buttons and the springs that till you get your little detent when you're opening them. But you want to make sure the rails are good and clean, that all the debris has been taken out, the buttons are in good shape. And then in this case, we had one rail that was missing a button, so we added a new button and two spring washers and reinstalled it back on the aircraft with everything now being clean. And as you can see, the rails look a little bit different when you take all the dirt and debris out of them. Now, from the rails, we want to go to the turtle deck. And when the canopy's off, this is that little section of the turtle deck that you can't get to with the canopy. So clean it while the canopy is off. I'll say that again. And then here, while you've got it all off, this is the other side of the aircraft. And you're going to make sure that everything's been cleaned up so you don't want the dirt to keep tracking back in. Now, once you've done all that and you can look at everything, you want to check the condition of the glass and the plastic on the inside and do a thorough canopy inspection here, which is what this picture is documenting. Now we want to check the condition of the rails. These are made of unobtainium right now, so you want to make sure yours are not wearing unduly. You want to make sure they're clean, and we're going to take them for measure and where they have any low spots. And if need be, the rails are symmetric and can be swapped from side to side to get even wear on the other side should you find an anomaly. At this time, you can also come back with a canopy sizing tool, and this will make sure that the Teflon tracks are now fully locked into their channels so that the canopy won't be grabbing the Teflon and it wants to stick out like a little limber snake on your canopy. So again, if you've got this tool, you can do that. If not, the maintenance manual discusses alternative methods. Now, once you have all this clean and it's all ready to go back on, now the rails are getting ready to go back in here. And of course, once the rails are done, then it's time for the canopy. And at this point, you might notice that the canopy front seal needs to be replaced, and we are awaiting a part from Fletcher for that. Meanwhile, the front canopy seal will be completely cleaned. It will be wiped of all oil, be wiped one more time with 99% alcohol right before we go to put the contact on there. And now we're looking at the condition of the gear wraparound legs, as well as the screws that go in to hold the brake cover in place. There's a lot there on these aircraft, and it's easy to overlook it. Now, here's the fuel sender, and we're looking up there. Do we have any blue stains on the bottom of the fuel sender? And in this case, that answer would be no. And the bundles and the wiring harnesses all going through appear to be in fairly good shape. So a plus on this sump. Now, here as we're looking down, we want to make sure that nothing gets in our way, and we're checking the boot cover, and you might notice that little piece of tape right there. And yes, it has been notched out previously, but there's no interference, so we're just going to go ahead and let it ride. All the edges were smooth. Now here we are taking an inspection mirror, and we're looking on the top of the spar to see what we can see. Make sure there's no corrosion up there. It is insidious. It is hard to see. You do need a bright light and a good mirror. We also sometimes take video with the inspection camera as we ride that little ridge between the L bracket on the spar, which is where dirt and debris likes to get, and where dirt and debris form. Now you're going to have a perfect environment for corrosion to form, and the intergranular corrosion in our spars is a beast, and once it starts, you're not going to stop it. And the most recent information from TrueFlight is you get 5/10,000ths and you're out. So 0.005. Not much to work with. But again, we take good pictures of the spar. We look to make sure it's clean, and we will wipe it down with some corrosion treatment before we're all done. And now here we're looking at the fuel sumps and where all the drains are, and we also check to see how much does the fuel drain sump. When you go to draw fuel out of here, how much are you getting out? Is it just a drip? Are you getting a good flow? We're also going to be looking at the sealant on the access ports. So this sump probably was a little bit slow. It needs to be cleaned up. We'll drain the tank. We'll take it out. We'll look at it. And if need be, we'll replace it. We do carry them in stock. Now, again, as I say, sometimes you get a twofer in a picture. Here we are checking the nav light. And guess what? The nav lens is pretty clear on this side. And it's pretty clear on this side. So that knocks off the lenses and the nav lights functionality working. And you can always check the tail at a later date when you're back there. You also want to check the electrical connection, the condition of the pitot tube. These are not cheap. I think the last one I heard about it was more than $1,200. Who knows what they are today. Now we're also going to look when you have the wingtips off. We're going to go in here. We're going to look at the counterweight balances, where they are and what kind of condition are they in. Yeah, they're okay, but rust will start to form there because you notice some of the paint is missing. So as a squawk, we're going to mark that it could be wire brushed down, primed, and painted. Now here we have a weep in the access cover. Now you could take it off and you could reseal it, but that is an airworthy item. It's not a running leak, so therefore it's just a little bit of a stain. It's not going to get any better, so it's something to put on the list that we're going to have to come back and address at a later date down the road. As you see, we check all of them. Now in our fuel tanks on the 4-place airplanes, we have 4 access covers on each wing for a total of 8. 2 in front, 2 in back of the spar on each one. While we're looking at all of those, we're going to check the condition of all the drain cocks. And as you see here, this one's pretty rusty. We'll see how it works. If worse comes to worse, we'll take it off the airplane and we'll clean it. Now, there is a leak somewhere down at the bottom end because it is distorting the wing root. So that's another thing that we look at. Also, we're going to be looking not only how bad is it distorted, where might it be coming from. At the same time, take a check at all your tenement clips there that hold your sump cover in place. Now, we're looking here at the clips and we're looking at the wing root area, and everything looks pretty good, except for the fact that we're going to have to make a note there about that fuel strain. Now, it's probably like coming somewhere around the fuel sender, but it doesn't appear to be from this photo. But we do want to check to make sure that the fuel sender on both sides is not leaking through the gasket. At the same time, if it's not leaking through the gasket and it's blue along the bottom, then you probably have a leak on the inside of the tank, and it may have to go and be addressed. Again, we're just covering all the bases here by taking photos of everywhere that we saw blue stain so that we can document where we were with it. And as you can see, it's pretty ugly. It comes off fairly easily with alcohol, will not affect the paint. Now, yes, you've removed the stain, but the condition that caused it is still going to be running along just fine. So as a preventive maintenance, we want to try to document where it's coming from. Okay, now moving on to the next one. As you can see here on the pitot tube, we're also looking at tie-down rings and the general condition of the bottom of the wing. We will notice any dings or dents in the wing when we first inspect the aircraft before we open it up. That way, if we have one, we can photo it, we can write it down in the log, and that way when the customer comes back, why did you put a dent in my wing? We can go, because you flew it here with the dent in the wing. And then as you're looking at the big one, the torque tube, we're looking up in it to see how clean it is. We'll clean it, we'll lubricate it, and put it all back together. But again, we're just looking to make sure that there's no problems in that general area. Now, while we're up in the front, we're going to take a look here at the front fork, and we're going to take a look at the bearings. These bearings were finally in good shape, but how dirty is the bearing? Yes. Is there paint coming off of it? Yes. Should it be cleaned and iodine primed or acid etch primed and then painted? Yes. Is it required? No. It's still a serviceable unit, so it can be a squawk, so noted for the future. Now, the spindle, you take a look at its condition. It will be cleaned up regardless of condition when it goes back in, and at the same time, we're going to lubricate the stack and everything. So while the airplane's in that condition, we're going to do all the maintenance on that. Now, you can have dings in your front strut. Doesn't make it unairworthy. It is recommended that you take care of them by usually roll locking it down, repriming it, and putting a hard paint on it so that it will avoid chips in the future. But again, not an airworthy item. Now, in this condition too, you're going to be looking at all the nose wheel, the main wheels, weather checking, cracks in the rubber, the treads. Does the tire have to be replaced? When was it replaced? Do they want to go with the same tire? Be sure you match on the smaller aircraft like the Cheetahs and the Travelers and the two-place. Make sure you match the ply rating of the tire because you don't want it to get out, because a 8-ply tire weighs more than a 6-pound, which weighs more than a 4-ply tire. So there. Now, here on the front strut, again, like with the dings and the gasket, are they serviceable? Yes. Are all the hardware there? Yes. Those nicks, not liked, but they're not going to get any better. So you might want to touch them up with some paint. So touch them up and add it to the list, and then move on from there. Now let's jump over to the mains. And as we pull the calipers apart, we want to look at, is the brake pad flat? Is it in good condition? Are the rivets there? Sometimes you'll get some scraping where the rivets are exposed, or it can have chips of it in this case. So is that brake pad still serviceable? Yes, but call it to the customer's attention. You may want to replace it while you have it there. Also take a look at all your hardware, all your bushings, and your brackets. And if you have the time and so inclined, they can be bead blasted down and retouched up. And you can also do the same thing with the bead blaster for the spark plugs. General condition is after you bead blast them, you mask them all off with tape and you paint them, put them all together, and then you can look at them after the inspection. You don't want to go through painting them until you've taken the chance to clean the plugs. You want to put them through the tester to make sure the resistance in the plugs is fine. But when they're all done, they're turned up like this with new copper gaskets or the annealed gaskets, and they're ready to go back in the airplane by applying some anti-seize and be torqued into the aircraft. Now, occasionally you find band clamps like this that have just come completely undone. Yeah, put it back together and put it on the squawk list of something you found, something to watch out. Here we're looking at where the hole is around the starter and how it's going to need to be addressed. And so we're taking looks at some of that. Also to where the muffler comes through the front baffle seals on the Traveler, Cheetahs, and Tigers, we're taking a look at how much air is going to get by there for cooling loss, and it may need to be addressed with a piece of baffle seal to be applied to the aircraft to be glued into place and to rivet it if need be. Now you're also going to be doing the same thing when you start looking at the rocker covers. Are they silicone gasket? Are they cork gasket? Are they leaking? Are the rivets in good shape? Are any missing? Do the baffle seals look well? Are the wires all routed appropriately? Do they have enough slack? Are they out of a chafe zone? In this case, look at the primer line on the left where it was rubbing against the baffle. As we continue our assessment of the engine compartment, we're looking to try to see where we might have cooling issues, and we're looking to see where RTV had been used maybe to make something up. Once you're done with the engine compartment, it's easy to move on to the seats, and you're looking at the bottom. Are the pans in good shape? What size are the lightning holes for getting them in and out? Then we can go down to the bottom by the front boot, and we want to look. Once upon a time, somebody cut that strip ring that holds that boot in place. Still serviceable, but it's nice to have a good one. Now we're looking at the air box, and as you can see, this is a power flow air box for the Cheetah as compared to the normal Cheetah air box. Just give you a side by side. Here's the carburetor where we're checking how's the carburetor attached. Is it the old trailer ball, or is it going to be secure where it's going to be not coming off the airplane and causing a problem for you? We also look at where your carb heat is connected. We look at see how the carb heat works. Make sure that cable is in good shape. So while you're down there, there's a lot to look at. When you're looking at this, you want to make sure there's no wobble in the bearing. Is the bearing warm? Is the bearing and the bracket that holds it to the air box, is it secure? And then once you have all that addressed, now you're going to look here at the power flow where we pick up our cabin heat and make sure that you have a good clean intake for air so that you get some good heating flow through there. And then here we're looking at the seal along the bottom where the hole is in with the strut out where it goes into your cockpit. You want to make sure you're not letting any hot air into the cockpit for that. And as you can see here, we're addressing the starter issue. It's coming along nicely. That's going to be a good block for that cooling flow. That's going to help this engine run a little better. And then here we're making the final adjustments on the muffler side as we jump over and we finish on the other side of the front baffle so this can all go together. And then where there was a hole previously that's no longer being used, it's been blocked with a round patch and some rivets. So again, all those little holes add up to a big, big leak down the road. And here we're taking a look at the baffle seals. They're not in real good shape, and it'd be a squawk that we're going to put on the list. Doesn't have to be changed here at annual, but it is something to note that this is where probably some of the some of the cooling flow is being lost and the cylinder head temperatures are a little bit elevated. And with summer coming, it's something to be looked at. We also look here at those little standoffs that go in on the front on the block by the number 2 cylinder to make sure you're not losing any air back and through there. And then here we're just looking at the general routing with the power flow and the scat tubing and the spark plug wires to make sure you don't have a spark plug laying on something, and we're looking at the ash there from the EGT holes. And then we taken a look at the strainers, and we did find something in the main strainer. We found some Teflon tape and some silicone. So somebody using the wrong sealant to seal something, and here we'll put a new crush gasket after cleaning the screen, and we save everything and a picture of all that to show the customer. And then the power flow comes off, and of course as part of the instructions for continued airworthiness, we're going to be exercising all those cylinders and take them apart. What would be an annual and an oil change without taking the filter and cutting it completely apart to find out if you have any metal in the filter, and if you do have metal, what kind of metal is it? Normally what we find is just carbon and soot, but again, once you cut it and drain it and take a look, then you'll know for sure, and it's part of the process. Again, here with the power flow, we have to look at all these junctions. Are they wearing? Are they elongating? You have to take them apart every year, because if you get an airplane that has not had these exercised in a couple of years, it can be quite the job to break them loose and get them free and get them out to inspect them to put them back in. Let's jump back over to the spark plugs just for a second. And now that you see when they come out of the blaster, they're pretty much all ready to go. And then again, you don't want to make sure that you don't forget to put the anti-seize on there. It won't kill you if it was an emergency, but use an anti-seize, and we use the stuff that looks like black water, the graphite, not the paint on stuff, which can cause some problems. And then while you're there, you can also look and open the fuel strainer and take a look what kind of debris do you have. We dump them out onto shop rags, and we do mark the date so that you know when we did this, and so we have a benchmark and when it might have to be done again. Also, too, you're going to look at all the hoses. The scat tubing is in good shape. Are the clear hoses, are they brittle or flexible? Are they broken? Is something clogging them? And again, you're going to look at the general condition in the motor mount where you might have, like, again, here, overspray on the motor mount. Can't imagine what once upon a time was sprayed there. Again, when you are looking at the aircraft initially, we take pictures if we see ripples in the wing. This documents that they're there. We don't want to add any more, but we want to know what we're starting with. Same thing for dings in the wing and the wing panels. You want to make sure that that's all noted on the initial inspection, especially if it's the first time you're seeing an aircraft. You want to see how the parts fit together. And on this particular Cheetah, we can see the anti-chafe tape is making it bow up a little bit, and we're going to have to make a notation of that, that it's riding a little high. Is it a defect in the metal? Is the chafe wrong? That's going to come back and be addressed in a moment. And then as you move around, we want to take a look at the wing root seals and the wing root, as well as the trim line against the wing root and the fuselage. Want to look at all of that. And as you can see here, there's a tear in the wing root. Do we want to paint some on, or are we going to put a new one? Again, it's a general squawk. We're also going to look at the decal on the front and the hardware. Again, when you find a dent or a ding in a control surface, you want to note that so that your shop doesn't get blamed for it, and two, the customer's aware of the real condition. And then you want to look at the trim tabs. Are they bent? In this case, this looks evident once upon a time that this aircraft was aft loaded. Somebody got out and off the wing, and it set down on its tail. We also want to look at the condition. Are there any stains? Are there any chips in the paint? Are there any places where corrosion's getting underneath? Is all the hardware there? Is the hardware proper? The plastic bits, are they rippling from the heat? Also, too, now we're back to where that anti-chafe seal was on the cowling. And as you can see, that is just door windows, or door or window sealant you can buy at Home Depot. That was not bought from an aviation aisle. It's too thick, and it can be replaced with the proper material, which is either Teflon or the cotton fiber, and the cotton ones are available from Aircraft Spruce. Now, here somebody's trying to make up for a bad seal by putting extra silicone on it and making it higher. Forget the fact that when you do that and shut it, it's going to stick to the upper cowling. So that will all be noted and cleaned off. As you can see, otherwise, the seals are in good shape. This one, we're looking at the condition of the spark plug and also why it's wearing right there. It was properly slitted, so it is making good seal, but we're getting some chafing wear. Now, just because you think you can stop an air leak around there, you can do that with the silicone seal like that, but it does look kind of confusing. Missing rivet, we can address that with a pop rivet. But you're looking at all these little places where air can leak out of the baffles, and that's your cooling loss right there on your aircraft, which is going to have your engine running hotter than normal. You also want to look at the condition of all your inspection plates, and here we're actually noting that the wing root seal is being distorted from the fuel tank leak, and as you can see here around the doubler on the tank, that there is some paint missing, and we're going to make a note of that because we don't want any corrosion in the aluminum. We're going to look at the condition of the disc on the brakes with the landing gear and all, and saying, so we can see, is it in good condition? Are we having any rust? You know, a few chips we're not going to worry about on the outside, but at this point, we're also going to take a look at the thickness of the brake disc to see if it needs to be replaced or if it's still unserviceable. You're also going to look on the bottom of the fuselage and see where you have ripples in the paint, because where paint cracks like that, that's where corrosion can start to form underneath. And once it gets into the aluminum skin, you're not going to stop it. Doesn't make it unairworthy, but you want to note it because it is something for future action, which we would consider preventative maintenance. Doesn't mean it has to be done as part of the annual. You also want to make sure that the fuel drains are sticking out properly in the sumps, that the holes are large enough, and that the sumps do work. And then here we are back looking at the canopy seal that is kind of hanging down. It's wrong, but you know, it does work in a condition. But this is again showing the condition of the dirty canopy rails and the tracks that are in the canopy. And this is why pictures earlier showed it coming off the aircraft. Now, again here, with it all the way back, is the front seal in place? How is the double bead seal? Is there interference with the plastic? Take a look at all of that, and do the seat cushions move to get easy and out? Now here we're looking at the canopy bow seal, where the windshield is actually to the canopy bow, and it is debonded. The only thing holding it is the screw at the bottom and the two at the top. So it's something worth noting, and that should be addressed because people do like to grab that canopy bow when they're getting in and out of the airplane. And then once again, what would be another annual without another shot of some dirty canopy rails? Sorry about the mismatch on that photos, folks. Then we also look at here like the plugs. We have to check the torque on these values of these bolts, but at the same time, we don't want rust there from that steel plug in an aluminum body. So we usually try to clean all that off and replace them with the plastic 808 158 hole plugs that go there, and that way you'll never have rust again. And then here again is baffle sealing, that with a baffle seal wasn't tall enough, so they built it up with RTV and then shut it to make sure they had a good seal, and again it stuck to the other side. This is just a bad install for a engine management system, and they just took the extra cable and just bundled it up and tied it wherever it was instead of dressing it nicely. Though not unairworthy, if you've ever had a scupper come loose, it can be put back on with a minimum of sealant and 6 rivets. This one used 12, I believe. And then here was a hole where an ELT antenna was in the back ELT cover. The plug is not painted. Look here at this glare shield, and you'll notice there are no defroster vents. Defrosters and their vents are part of the heating, defrosting, de-icing system of our aircraft on the type certificate. Here we notice a spot of brown fluid on the floor on the co-pilot side. Now we're going to have to find out where it's coming from. Was the chain over-oiled? Is it a leak from somewhere else? Also, too, when we're looking here at fuel tank leaks, they will ripple that wing root seal, and yes, eventually you won't be able to keep it in the airplane. The stopgap is people will put rivets in there, but until you address the leak that's causing it and probably have to replace it, you're going to be having an issue. Again, wiring bundles need to be neat when they're dressed. Wrapped with spy wrap is nice, but you want to make sure that you don't have any loose wires just floating around that can snag a mechanic or that a mechanic can break it. So we hope you've enjoyed the looking at the pictures. By the way, folks, we found we had 151 pictures to document a discrepancy list that was 40 items. That way, because some pictures did more than one. And on the original discrepancy list, there were 66 items from the project airplane that will be checked at a later date. So I know the annual inspection process is a mystery. It's kind of convoluted. But if you look at it from that, it's a straightforward process, and you want to get an airworthy airplane out of it. We hope you found all this useful and informative. Thanks so much for watching, and have a great day flying your Grumman. And in addition, there's a little treat about 3 o'clock in the morning when I'm doing web work and other stuff. Here's my cat coming down, playing with a mouse and meowing and just having a good time with me in the wee hours of the night. So I thought I would throw this into you as a little treat. Y'all please enjoy.